I'm very happy to introduce this case study on lead-acid batteries recycling in Central America, specifically landing on a private sector innovation that combines ESM, environmentally sound management, plus cleaner production with low cost and diminished environmental impact. This is the index of the presentation I will share with you today. We will look at the problem with very graphic images. Secondly, we will briefly introduce the regional strategy on ESM of used lead-acid batteries for Central America, the Caribbean, Mexico, Colombia, and Venezuela. Thirdly, we will comment on the support of the Guatemalan government. And then we will follow with the case of Acumuladores Iberia, the power of ESM plus cleaner production in ULAP recycling, and ending the presentation with pending challenges. Right after the regional strategy, I will ask briefly Brian Wilson to comment on the impact of the regional strategy in other parts of the world. The problem is very serious, but it hasn't been highlighted sufficiently enough. And this relates to the poisoning that lead causes in different segments of the population, especially the most sensitive segment, the children. You can see the brain, nerve damage, hearing problems, digestive issues, stunt growth, among the key impacts of lead poisoning. This slide gives more details on the symptoms and the additional complications for children. You can see that this is a very severe impact, and until now, there has been a lot of efforts internationally led by UNEP, the United Nations Environmental Program, focused on eliminating lead from fuels and also lead from paint. And now is the time to start an initiative on management in a responsible way the used lead-acid batteries, which is 80% of the problem. And you can understand why, seeing that the severe damage for everybody, but especially for the children. Loss of development skills, IQs reduced, hearing loss, kidney damage, slow body growth. This is really serious. This is just one indication of lead. It moves throughout the body and ends in your face, in your liver, in your kidney, in different parts of the world, in the bones. And this really diminishes the quality of life, and handicaps people, and besides the environmental problems in the ecosystem. Apologies. 80%, as I mentioned, of the unsound management of lead occurs with ULAP. And this is a very sad picture from our colleagues, OK International in India. Quite often, in many of our countries, children and women are engaged in this kind of illegal, unsound recycling or dismantling of used lead-acid batteries with severe environmental problems and health problems. Also, we have like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Used lead-acid batteries have a market value, which is good, because this could facilitate the collection. But because of its severe health and environmental problems, it needs a very tight supervision. Unfortunately, this picture, which was taken in Guatemala, is not the exception. This happens all over the world, especially in developing countries, where the informal sector with lack of knowledge and only seeking economic return, just store without techniques, without following the Basel Convention technical guidelines, the use lead-acid battery. Moreover, across the borders of our countries, there are blind spots, and because of the high economic value of the used lead-acid batteries, which may be up to $10 each, there is a lot of smuggling, like this operation was captured between Guatemala and Mexico. But this is the story, again, in many of our borders. And this is why governments need to take charge. And we need to increase the awareness raising. And this is a health and environmental problem. We need to get the ministers of environment, ministers of health, fully engaged civil society. And now we need to use the technology, mobile phones, to capture and share with the proper authorities all of these illegal operations. Well, in response to this challenge, in 2002, we started in Central America, Mexico, the Caribbean, Colombia, and Venezuela, a very important initiative. This was a project aimed at mapping what was the current situation, the current practices, as well as delineating a sound strategy that could help to apply the Basel Convention technical guidelines. All of the countries mentioned in this chart were involved. Mexico was involved, Central America, Caribbean, Colombia, and Venezuela. But out of all of these segments, some pilot countries were selected, where more in-depth study were carried out. And this is also in the light that the Basel Convention sets obligations by the parties to develop nationally proper facilities for recycling and managing hazardous wastes, especially used lead-acid batteries, as it can be understood. But because of the size of the Caribbean and Central American countries, it makes sense to take a regional approach, because economies of scale of sound recycling facilities cannot justify a facility in each of the countries. So what was done is a study on what were the facilities, especially identifying the ones with environmentally sound management. And we promoted the concept of applying the Basel Convention, which also calls for minimizing transboundary movements. And sub-regional recycling hubs were established, and our center was able to provide, in coordination with the International Lead Management Center, technical assistance to different ULAP recycling facilities, the one in yellow, one in Guatemala, one in Colombia, as well as later on one in Costa Rica, where we obtained the shutting down of a really unsound facility next to a creek, and we collaborated into a brand new facility. Likewise, in the case of the Dominican Republic. So all of these original flows were modified later on. Unfortunately, Colombia, even though it has 12 rotary furnaces, the national legislation does not allow, according to the current interpretation, the importation of ULA. So this strategy was carried out from
لا في شو يكون مقلوبين.
I continue. So what were the outcomes? First of all, we developed in this strategy, and this was actually implemented not only by the Basel Convention Regional Center in El Salvador or Central America and Mexico, but also by the Basel Convention Regional Center for the Caribbean. We developed a model approach to ESM, as well as national action plans and inventories for each of the pilot countries in a regional strategy. We also agree on a specific assessment procedure for ESM, because the Basel Convention describes what environmentally sound management of ULAP is with a life cycle approach, but how do we verify it? And it was agreed by all the countries participating on this strategy to adopt the green-led assessment tool. Moreover, this project also had a global contribution as it produced the manual on ESM of ULAP, which was lately adopted by the Basel Convention. In addition, as I mentioned with the yellow circles, we were able to provide technical support. This was free technical support to 4 ULAP ESM recycling facilities: Acumuladores Iberia in Guatemala, PV Metals in Costa Rica, Verde Ecoreciclaje at the Dominican Republic, MAC in Colombia, as well as to 3 temporary storage facilities in El Salvador. And also, we came up at the facility level with a new model of low-cost ESM plus cleaner production. But what is the model approach? Well, during the strategy formulation, we identified these 7 steps that are needed if we are to have a good chance of success for a regional strategy. And this is obvious: an inventory not only of quantities of ULAP, but of what is out there in terms of recycling capacity, the development of significant public education and awareness raising program, policy development, and we will talk later on this. This is not only applying the Basel Convention, the text, but also how to make the combating of illegal operations. But the informal sector is a reality. So it was identified there that one way out of how not to close jobs there is to try to help them to consolidate and direct their activities into safe and environmental friendly activity with the proper training without engaging into battery dismantling, but only into the collection and properly delivery to authorized recycling. This collection, the collection needs to be done correctly. The batteries need to be collected with the liquids. This is in the Basel Convention technical guidelines. Otherwise, the liquid, which is sulfuric acid diluted, but sulfuric acid contaminated with lead and lead compounds, can be a serious problem on water tables or water bodies or even the soil. Likewise, the storage. And the next, of course, is important. How do we prepare the ULAP for transportation and for shipping? And we will show you some pictures on how this can be done safely. And lastly, the recycling. The recycling is not any type of recycling. The economic gains from recycling are important, but unless the health elements are respected, we are in serious problem. Okay, before I talk about the support of the Guatemalan government, I will ask Brian Wilson to briefly comment on the impact of the ULAP strategy in other parts of the world. Brian?
Hi, Miguel. Thank you very much.
Do you have the floor?
Thank you. Yes, the model approach that was determined in Central America and the Caribbean did have an impact, and Miguel's already touched on one of the aspects, which is the training manual that accompanies the Basel Convention technical guidelines. Miguel mentioned this briefly, but this has been a really useful document. For example, in one of the 8 chapters in the training manual, it does describe the assessment process required to determine national strategies and regional strategies. And this has been used in Nepal very recently, and prior to that in Peru, and also in Cambodia. And I'm sure it will be used in other countries as more and more people become aware of the process to determine which options are best suited for a particular country, whether it's a national approach or a regional approach. Then because of the experience in Central America and the Caribbean, the training manual also goes on to explain how to set up environmentally sound collection and storage, as Miguel has already mentioned, and the strategies, but in particular strategies for dealing with the informal sector, which is one of the real problems in developing countries and countries in transition. The informal sector, it's not registered, it's not legal, it doesn't operate in any formal manner. The owners of such operations don't pay any taxes. They have no regard for environmental controls or health and safety and well-being of their workers. But they, because their costs are so low, because they disregard all the welfare and environmental controls that they should employ, they can afford to pay high prices for batteries. And there are strategies to actually deal with that. Then there are also strategies for the preparation and dissemination of educational materials for those people that may or have been exposed. And there's also a chapter on the remediation of contaminated soils, where perhaps there have been activities in the past. And some of this was actually used in Africa and in the Far East to remediate sites that have been contaminated. There's also a very good section on the control of use-lead-acid batteries and the importance of the prior informed consent procedure, something that's often ignored, unfortunately. This is a system to guarantee that batteries that are disposed of or recycled, I should say, in a regional approach actually do go to the right smelters that have got the correct environmental controls. Lastly, I just want to say that one of the other major impacts in developing countries and countries in transition has been the fact that the introduction of the training manual and the monitoring that's been observed using the green lead process for certification of such plants has led to the creation of green jobs. Now, I'm not saying that's the be and end all of it, but green jobs means that people who work in such smelters do get proper protection. They have their proper equipment, there are proper environmental controls, so they can work in a safe environment and not be poisoned by any emissions from the plant. As far as I'm concerned, the project in Central America and the Caribbean has been a huge success and has actually exceeded the expectations that we had at the beginning of the project when it was first announced by the Basel Secretariat in Geneva. Miguel, the floor is now yours.
Thank you so much, Brian. So this shows that a multi-stakeholder initiative that engaged private sector, government authorities, academia, and international experts in one region can have a global impact. But how was this impact at the national level and in the region? When one government really shined on this was the Guatemalan government, as it started to combat illegal operations, and it followed in detail the process of transformation of the Acumuladores Iberia recycling facility. And only after this was fully completed, authorized imports of ULAP, understanding that they had shipped into good practices, and as a service to neighboring countries with no appropriate facilities, allowing them to comply with the Basel Convention with a regional approach. Also, as a consequence of this change in paradigm, the paradigm shift, the government of Guatemala provided a very speedy process for transboundary movements of EULA, and with emphasis on its proper following of the Basel technical guidelines and the manual that Brian commented. Also supported a training workshop to Basel Convention contact points for Central America, which was hosted by Acumuladores Iberia, and now has offered Guatemala to lead the preparation of a revised version of the Basel Convention technical guidelines. This was formally announced at the Open-Ended Working Group in 2014 in Geneva, and it was confirmed by the new minister just 2 weeks ago. And moreover, Guatemala is going to host at the end of this month, on February 24th, 25th, both a workshop on EULA for Central America, Caribbean, and some countries of South America, as well as a high-level segment with participation of ministers. Well, we will move into the case of Acumuladores Iberia. There is a timeline. This was not done overnight. It started a long time ago in 2007, where AI approached the National Cleaning Production Center. Later on, in 2008, it approached the Basel Convention Secretariat and the Basel Convention Regional Center for Central America and Mexico, and as a response received the visit from Brian Wilson as a consultant from the Basel Convention Secretariat, who explained to them the Basel technical guidelines as well as the Green Lead Protocol, and assisted them in preparing a self-assessment. Afterwards, there were 2 visits, and only until 100% of the Basel Convention technical guidelines were complied with, as evaluated by applying the assessment tool of the Green Lead, the first Green Lead award was granted in the world to Acumuladores Iberia in the presence of the Minister of the Environment in Guatemala. But this company did not stop there. They also sought to build capacity by benefiting from a USA training on ISO 14000. And as a consequence of all of this, the Guatemalan Ministry of Environment authorized AI to import EULA from any Basel Convention party. This is the delivery of the first Green Lead Award. Brian Wilson was there, Mr. Hugo Novoa, very proud, receiving the first Green Lead International Award. And actually, this was highlighted by an international magazine, Metal Monthly Bulletin, which published 2 articles in different years relating to these successful advances in Central America and in Acumuladores Iberia. The actions of Acumuladores Iberia continued. They had a strong research and development department, and they applied to National Cleaning Production Awards, armed with this support from the National Cleaning Production Center, the Basel Convention, the ISO 14000, and they obtained 2 National Cleaning Production Awards in 2010, in October, in recognitions of improvement in furnace efficiency, reduction in the use of energy consumption through optimization of the lead smelting process, as well as, very important, in the use of chemicals in the refining process. But moreover, and this is really impressive, they were not happy just to receive the awards. In the same activity, they delivered to the Vice President of Guatemala, which was president at that time, a proposal for making mandatory the extended producer responsibility to all lead-acid battery distributors, despite the fact that they are the leading one, but they are supported by 1,500 distributors throughout the country in Guatemala, which they have no legal obligation to comply with extended producer responsibility. This is the picture of Hugo Novoa, the Minister of Environment of Guatemala, the Vice President, and Luis Marroquin, who is joining us, the plant manager of Acumuladores Iberia. They continue with activities. In July 2010, we collaborated with the International Lead Management Center, Brian in particular, and they were invited to make a presentation at the second International Conference on Secondary Use of Lead in Hyderabad, and as well as the 14th Asian Battery Conference. This continues because the Green Lead Awards, they have a validity for 2 years, and they applied for a renovation, and they received the second Green Lead Award in 2011 in September, but before, in March, they received 2 of 7 Central American Cleaner Production Awards. Lastly, in this slide, they were invited, because of all of this record, to make a presentation on their model of ESM plus cleaner production on the second regional meeting in Mexico. This is the picture of the regional award that was given by the Central American Commission on Environment and Development after a group of independent experts from Central America visited all of the awardees and verified their merits. Moreover, in 2014, with the coordination of our center, Acumuladores Iberia visited China. They presented in January 2015 in Constance, Germany, their case to the International Expert Working Group on ESM of the Basel Convention. And following this impact, they were invited by the Basel Convention Secretariat to make a presentation and to have a stand jointly with our center at the Science Fair from Science to Action in Geneva during the Triple COP, the Conference of the Parties of the Basel, Stockholm, and Rotterdam Convention. In November 2015, very recently, they were invited as advisors of our center to participate in Osaka, the first international workshop that UNEP Chemicals organized, and this was focused on Asia. And it was the first steps towards the new UNEP Chemicals initiative on ESM of EULA. And this is about to happen in the next 2 weeks. They will host a visit by EULA workshop participants in Guatemala at their facility, as well as of ministers of environment and some ministers of health from Central America and the Dominican Republic. But what was the outcome of all of it? It was impressive enough in 2010, and now it's more than that. They have achieved a 98% reduction in the use of chemicals. They moved from 32% average slag generation in the industry to 1.76%, and they are aiming to achieve 0% slag generation with a new hydrogen fuel cell that they are installing. They have achieved 100% reuse of reconditioned electrolyte of the EULA, and more importantly, this is the bottom line that shows that being responsible also makes good business. They achieved 74% reduction in the cost of recycling, moving from $600 per ton to $160 per ton. So this This proves that Acumuladores Iberia, armed with ESM plus cleaning production, plus the ISO 14000, has turned a hazardous waste into a product while increasing efficiency, virtually eliminating waste, and reducing costs. And this is why it is a model for different parts of the world. You can see here a picture is worth more than 1,000 words. So you can see the professional management of the facility, the signage in the trucks, the proper packaging of the shipping, how they are managed, and this is a total contrast with the pictures that I shared with you at the beginning of this presentation. Moreover, the good news is that they are happy to share this experience with any country of the world. And this was highlighted by them at the science fair. They highlighted it in Osaka. And this is good for Central America, for Guatemala. This shows that innovation can be achieved in our countries, and with the support of UNEP Chemicals, the Basel Convention Secretariat, and many of you, this can be a reality in many places of the world. What are the pending challenges? Strengthening ESM of ULAP by formulating a revised ULAP strategy for an action plan for Central America, Dominican Republic, and Mexico. Increased training and applying the new ESM benchmark assessment tool, which Brian Wilson has developed and will be explaining in the workshop in Guatemala at the end of this month. Increasing the combat of illegal operations, but this is very important, applying the Basel Convention, especially the proximity principle, and this has the added benefit of reducing the carbon footprint and creating jobs and creating a green economy in our country. We also need to strengthen the awareness raising efforts on the high health and environmental costs of unsound ULAP management. We need to make mandatory legally extended producer responsibility for ULAP. Costa Rica has already this, and Guatemala has a proposal presented by Acumuladores Iberia. We need to set up an electronic communication system to dynamize the PIC procedure, the prior and informed consent procedure, and we need to increase the participation of the civil society. I will ask in this part Luis Marroquin to briefly explain with short sentences in Spanish, and I will try to translate this part. These are 4 slides that explain the flow chart of the process of the recycling of the used lead acid batteries. Luis, very briefly, could you explain this flow?
Ok, Miguel, buenos días. Un saludo a todos. Muchas gracias por la participación. El proceso que estamos siguiendo es la recepción de las baterías húmedas. Es un requisito importante recibirlas con ácido. Miguel.
Adelante, Luis.
Ok. Posteriormente, las baterías entran a una cortadora o una trituradora, donde desarrollamos el proceso de separación del ácido electrolito. Luego se reacondiciona y se prepara para la venta. Del otro lado tenemos las baterías secas y realizamos el proceso de desulfurización.
Okay, gracias, Luis. Thank you, Luis. Luis is explaining that once the used lead acid batteries are received, a cutter is applied, and there is a separation of the liquid, the electrolyte, which is reconditioned, and immediately they have a product for sale. It generates income, while the dry ULAPs start a process of desulfurization. Adelante, Luis.
La siguiente, the next slide. Las baterías ya secas, después de la extracción del ácido, las metemos a una trituradora de vapus, donde se realiza un proceso hidráulico de separación de los componentes. De este proceso de separación obtenemos una solución de sulfato de sodio, polipropileno, óxido de plomo y plomo metálico. El sulfato de sodio va para la venta, el polipropileno va para la venta y el óxido de plomo y el plomo metálico va para los hornos. Adelante, Miguel.
Gracias, Luis. Well, once they have the dry batteries, they go into a crusher, and this crusher is followed by a separation process where they produce a solution with sodium sulfate, which is a product that can be sold. Then the polypropylene, which is also sold, generates income, and the two other components, lead oxide and lead, are sent into the furnace.
The next slide, please. The next slide. Thank you. El material ya desulfurizado es ingresado a los hornos de reducción con el agregado de un gas reductor, energía calorífica y un mínimo de químicos reductores. De este proceso de reducción en hornos obtenemos el residuo sólido que retorna al horno. Tenemos gases exhaustos, monóxido de carbono y dióxido de carbono, y obtenemos plomo metálico al 98% de concentración, el cual va para los reactores de refinado. Miguel.
Gracias, Luis. Once they have the sulfurate material, this is put into a furnace with reducing gas, and heat energy is supplied, as well as some small quantities of chemicals to do a reduction process, and then move into the furnace at 1,400 centigrade degrees, and this produces the slag. And take care, look at this, it is sent again into the furnace, and this generates exhaust gases, CO2 energy, and lead with 98%, which is doesn't stop there, but it goes into a process of refining. Adelante, Luis.
La próxima. Ya el plomo en un 98% de pureza es ingresado a los reactores de refinado, al cual le agregamos aire seco, le agregamos óxido de plomo y una solución de soda cáustica, obteniendo como resultado del proceso de refinado plomos con contenido de antimonio, plomo puro al 99.99% y residuos de óxidos de plomo, los cuales son regresados al horno. El plomo antimonial al 91.99 es procesado para la venta. El plomo puro 99.99 también es procesado para la venta y el residuo es retornado al horno. Adelante, Miguel.
Gracias, Luis. Thank you, Luis. So then, throughout the refining process, lead oxide is added, as well as heat energy, dry air, and this is sent into the refining kettles, And as an outcome, we have 3 products. We have lead, 91%. This is with an antimonium. We have lead, 99.99%. All of these are products to be sold. And there is some lead oxide that are sent again into the furnace. Okay. Luis, ¿algún comentario breve, rápido, adicional? Do you have any additional quick comments?
Solamente agradecer la presencia de todos los participantes. Ese es un proceso, como tú dijiste, que estamos listos para compartir a nivel mundial, tanto con los gobiernos como con las empresas interesadas. Muchísimas gracias.
Okay, thank you. Luis just wanted to add his thanks to all of the organizations that have contributed to this success, the national government, the Clean Air Production Center, our center, the Basel Secretariat, and Brian Wilson. Last but not least, Brian Wilson in the International Lead Management Center, and of course now the Basel Secretariat through this webinar and the MOOC, the massive online open course that is organizing with this material. This information shows us how to contact us, and we open the floor for questions.